Have you heard the one where I was a dance teacher? Jazz hands. Well, it was most of my life I was a dance teacher. I love dance. I was a gymnast, of course. You could watch that video in the past. I was a dancer probably a little late in life. Probably I hit it around 14, 15. I decided to take up dance, and you can watch that video too if you like. But as a dance instructor, that was a career that I had probably from about 15 till 2018. And it was a big joy in my life. Now, you don't have to have a lot of credentials to be a dance teacher. So when I started, I was a teenager. I just had really begun dance myself. And I had gotten into another studio through a friend of mine that they needed a sub. And then I started to teach like kids that were not much, younger than me. And I remember they just were like, go ahead. And I was like, I don't know anything about kids. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to teach. They even had me teaching tap, which I had never taken. And I was like, I don't know tap. And they're like, don't worry. The kids don't know tap either. You'll be fine. You had to put on like this record, and you turn on this record and it's like shuffle, ball, change. And then they just follow along this record. It was a joke. It was a joke. But this was how I began my career in Texas. So I'm 15 years old, teaching these kids, not really understanding, but like loving the idea to choreograph. Now, of course, I'm teaching like really, really little ones, and I'm choreographing like things that are just too obscure that they're never, they need words, they're little, and I just didn't get it. So there was a lot of like, there was a learning curve. I also was, different in Texas, just not the usual kind of kid. So like there would be parents that were like, oh, that girl, she's weird. I would like wear a beret. Like, I don't know. I was different. And I remember wearing like backless leotards or backless shirts. And we had people like pulling their kids. I'm like, are you kidding me? But this was Texas. And so I was one of those kids that was, rebellious and, funky hair. And so I think it was like not easy for parents to originally trust me with their children. So it took some time and it took some learning on how to really become a teacher. But I don't think it really shifted until I moved. When I moved to New Jersey, I got a job in Hoboken at this movement space. And it was dance, but it was like run by like two hippies. And it was in this huge loft in Hoboken, which was interesting because it was in the same building my mother, when she was like in her 20s, worked at. It was like an old blinds factory or something. And it was great for dance. But this studio had me working like with 30 kids. And so it was boot camp. And I was like, what is it, like wrangling cats? Like I learned so much. How to get kids' attention, how to keep kids' attention, how to choreograph on big groups of children, learning how to use the space. It was a lot. I was in my 20s. I had, a lot of, things going on in my life. So this was a really easy gig that we would do birthday parties and classes and such and such. And so it was a good start for me in New Jersey. Of course, I was still dancing. I was still auditioning. I was still working at Johnny Rockets. But this was another, I usually had 5 jobs. So this was another one of my 5 jobs. And I was going through school, but also I think even after graduation of school, I was at Broadway Dance Center. So that was my hub. There were steps in New York, but then Broadway Dance Center was kind of, really what I loved. And so through school, I would still take classes. And after school, I would still take classes. I actually got a job working at Broadway Dance Center. So I was an assistant to like one of the kids' classes. And it made me go at Saturday at 8:30 in the morning, I think is like when I needed to be in New York. And of course, I'm living in New Jersey. So it took about 45 minutes to an hour on a Saturday morning. In my 20s, it was rough. But I did it for a year and I was an assistant. And my teacher, the one that I was assisting, actually ended up, she must have been, a little older than me, but she ended up having like a drug problem. So she got fired and I took over her class. So now I am a teacher at Broadway Dance Center, getting paid, not just getting trade, like I was getting free classes for being an assistant. But now I was like a true teacher at Broadway Dance Center for like these kids. And I'm like teaching like Lenny Kravitz kids and stuff. It's like crazy. And I actually enjoyed it. And I think if I were to have stuck with that, I probably would have like gotten up into teaching adults. But I quit. I do think about that a lot. I really, in my 20-year-old head, was like, oh, Saturday at 8:30, not worth it. But looking back, I was, I did a lot of hip hop with like the Glenn and Brian, which were like this duo. They were the ones that choreographed for the Michael Jackson concert that I talked about in another video. So I was like in their little company because, I think they really wanted me for like commercials because I have, a commercial face. But I was learning hip hop and I was, of course, a ballet, loved ballet. And I probably could have done really well staying at Broadway Dance Center, but that just wasn't my path. So also I then, met Josh and we moved. Once we moved to Asbury Park, New Jersey, that's when I started to, find an interview for a dance studio in New Jersey. So this was now, a career that I had like honed. So like I had something that most teachers don't have. I had a high knowledge of hip hop, but also could do point work and ballet work, which, is kind of unheard of. You don't usually choose one or the other. So to have both of that, it was really easy to find a job. So I would send out my resume and, oh my goodness. And it was crazy. I went to so many dance studios to try and find a job. And there was one, I'll never forget it. All they did was Bruce Springsteen music. And they didn't, they didn't even have bars. For ballet, you have your hand on the bar and you're like, ah, da. No, they didn't even have bars. They're like, you're going to teach ballet. I'm like, I'm going to teach ballet with no bar. I can't do it. And I can't do Bruce Springsteen. I'm sorry. Just can't do it. So I didn't get that job. I actually got a job in a place called Dance for Joy. And I remember the interview. I was being interviewed as well as now one of my closest friends, Kim. We got interviewed like the same day, at least the same week. And I remember Carol, the owner, was sitting us down separately. But I do remember the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I'm like, I see myself, teaching. She's like, not owning a studio? I'm like, oh God, oh no, I don't ever want to own a studio. But I said that because I didn't want her to think I wanted to take her, kids and start my own studio. So it was for loyalty purposes, that's what I said. Honestly, though, I didn't want to own a studio. But I really said those words in hopes to get a job. Kim, on the other hand, she's like, I'd see myself in 5 years owning a studio. And that's what happened. We both got a job at Dance for Joy, and Kim ended up buying it. And she was perfect for that. And the best boss I ever had in my life. And a very great friend. And to this day, we are I hope our kids marry each other so we can be family. That's all I have to say. And so with that being said, Kim and I started at the studio at the same time. And it was rough. The teenagers were like legit teenagers. Like horrible. They were like so teenage, like flashing us behind our backs, like bullying other kids. Like there would be times where they would bring me to tears. It was atrocious because like teenagers and kids, they don't like change. And now they've got this, their old owners like out, and now there's two like 20-year-olds, trying to do this business. So I was the assistant director and Kim was the owner. And, we had a time of it. It was brilliant. It was lovely. It was great. And we watched these kids grow from like, oh my gosh, when are they ever going to get good, to this dynamic troupe. Because we weren't really into competition. We were into the artistry. And I got to choreograph. So like my dream of like when I was a kid, I'd drag my stinking cousin to go do choreography that I, did to Carly Simon songs. Like now was like becoming a reality. And so these children that I was able to like mold as little sponges, and then we get to do choreography. It was a dream. And so I was able to do that. And maybe I'll be able to stick a piece in the comments from the Vimeo. It's one of the tributes to my mom. It's a dance. And if any students of mine are watching this and you have my favorite dance, Wild Geese, send it to me. I can't find it anywhere. But as I progressed, I am who I am. And it was time for me to move on into the life of like health coaching, and like I had spoken about, I feel it was God's will for me to go. And it was time. And so I'm very much like a phoenix, like burn it down and then restart. And so I told Kim when it was time, I'm like, yeah, I think I'm done. And it was sad. We cried, but it was the best thing for me to leave at that time. And I remember the last show that we had, the whole studio did this flash mob for me. And they all danced on stage just for me and to the Golden Girls theme song, because that's perfection. And I think that lines up as one of like my favorite days of my life. And it goes up with, getting baptized, my son being born, and getting married. Like those are my top. And I still have all the friendships from there. And even two of the students, like they were the homeschool students, but they're women now. And I work, alongside of one of them, and the other one is just, it's a fantastic human being. So I can't say enough about being a dance teacher. It was amazing, hard, and you learn so much about yourself. The controlling issues that I had, or like the demands. I'm a very bossy person, and it was able to come out through that. But also being able to see and recognize that and tame it, so I can help young people and learn to take them on their journey, because it's not about me, it's about them. I appreciate that every day, and I do love my students. I don't miss the hours, 3 to 9, don't miss that. I don't miss having dinner of nachos at 9:30 at night. I don't miss that. But I miss the memories, and the choreography, the girls, and the connections. So that's me, an ex-dance teacher.